Hello out there in YouTube world. This is Bob Crumb. I'm back. Today we're speculating a little bit on what it might be like if Shan Yu was hunting Mulan because she was a vampire. Let's get this started. All right, so just thinking about what a vampire hunter might or might not look like is actually loads of fun. I kind of grew up, enthralled by these kind of stories, vampire hunters, what they might do to take out vampires and why vampires are such a menace. And this is kind of a culmination of that. Pretty stoked. Oh my gosh, what is a vampire and what is a vampire slayer? All right, a vampire, following along with last week's theme of the undead, because we did a zombie. We're going to go along with the new kind of more glamorous style of undead. If you want to be glamorous and you want to be undead, you definitely want to be a vampire. It's one of those things. They dress well, they look nice, they're forever young. But of course it comes at the cost of, giving up all the yummy stuff you have to eat in favor of kind of being a bloodsucker for the rest of eternity. It really doesn't seem like a fair trade because I like stuff like, Twinkies and not blood. But you do have to deal with the perils of the vampire hunter. There are just some people out there that want to let it go, don't want to let you be. You're going to go out there and you're going to suck blood from unwilling people. Well, they're going to try and stab you through the heart. Yeah, it's not just us in the West that have these ideas and notions of vampires. There's actually a whole lot of ideas out there and notions. Mesopotamia, ancient Egypt, in the Far East, they have different kinds of undead, blood-sucking people. So, in keeping with that kind of Far East theme, here is Mulan, and actually Shan Yu. Shan Yu is the bad guy in the Mulan Disney film. And he is the Khan of some kind of, very scary Mongolian-looking group of people who want to do war and the bad things. And in all honesty, it makes you think that when you watch this, that perhaps it's a historical tale that this guy, Shan Yu, and Mulan herself were actually real people. And the fact is, they're not. Most scholars can pretty much agree at this point that it was just stories that were told, kind of plays and tales that talked about Mulan being part of a family where she had, I believe, a sister and a little brother, but he was an infant. And there came a time to do war with a Khan, a great and scary man who wanted to come and do great war on them. So in order to not have them do that, they had to go and do great war. Well, Mulan was actually afraid that her dad would get called up, kind of drafted into the war. And so she, without him knowing, kind of took off and went to fight on the family's behalf. Dressed as a man, hung out as a dude, did battle, and in all these stories, it's kind of cool. She's kind of rough and mythological figure, a legend. Unfortunately, it's not true. So in all these stories, they pretty much have a similar thread throughout them, except for the fact that the Disney one ends nicely and happily. In the one that is traditionally told, I forget through which dynasty, but they didn't have it end so well for Mulan. She came home and she actually found that her dad had gone to actually fight in the war, except that he was fighting on the side that she was fighting against. Talk about tragedy. And then, because something went poorly, she was forced to go be the concubine of this Khan that they were fighting against. And rather than do that, she decided to opt out of all life. And that's how it ended. And that's kind of sad. Wow, what a terrible notion. And sad though it might be, and terrible a notion, it's one thing it's really not, is it's not creepy. So I'm going to try and dredge up some of that creepiness with trying to figure out what Shan Yu would have looked like. So I gave him kind of one of those spears on his back because, I don't know, it just seemed like a scary kind of pointy weapon. I really don't know much about what they would have wielded beyond a bow. In the movie Mulan, he's got an eagle or a hawk or something, so I've made that kind of part of his character as well. He sits on top of his arm as he's kind of peering over the ledge trying to find where Mulan is because she is rumored to be a vampire. But I liked the idea of these Chinese cannons that kind of look like fireworks. And I made one kind of with that dragon's head look with a big spike in it. Because what do we know about vampires? They have certain weaknesses. One of them is if you stab them in the heart. Now that sounds a lot like the weakness of, like, I don't know, everybody. That's a silly notion. You stab anybody in the heart and they're going to die. I guess, you could also do other bad things to their body and would also kill them, which also sounds just like everybody else. But it's something enduring. I actually heard somebody say one time that it wasn't the actual wound to the heart that would do them in, but rather if you were to sneak up on a vampire in his coffin as he was sleeping at night, and you pinned him to the floor of his coffin through his very heart with a stake, that would hold him there while you were able to do, I don't know, open the blinds and let the sunlight in. Yeah, because that's the other weakness of a vampire. Ultraviolet rays. So you don't like your vampire buddy, just open the shades. So that, it kind of speaks to the fact that they're creatures of the night and super scary and spooky. But some of the other things that we've come accustomed to, a vampire hunter should walk around with garlic cloves? Like, that's gonna make you smell so bad they're not gonna attack you? Interesting. I'd love to know really where that came from. Because garlic, that's yum. Why wouldn't they like that? I've got Shan Yu carrying kind of a cross. That's a universal symbol that kind of freaks out vampires, right? I don't actually know why that's a thing, other than the fact that a lot of the stories surround a guy named Vlad the Impaler, who at some point turned his back on the Christian church and the symbol of the Christian church in order to be a ruthless killer because of something. He was slighted by somebody in the church. And as such, he held a grudge, and so somebody made it into like this horrible weakness, like he couldn't look at a cross. I don't know. Yeah, so last time I did one of these, I kind of read something from H.P. Lovecraft, and some people were like, yeah, that made it kind of fun. You should read stuff sometimes while you draw stuff. So I'm going to read a thing. I'm kind of a fan of Edgarr Allen Poe. It's a pretty well-known fact, actually, that I feel like this kindred with him. He has a great vocabulary. I enjoy the way he writes. And ta-da, I'm kind of creepy. So I'm going to read one of my more favorite poems of his called Bells. And it's kind of a strange juxtaposition. I think I've talked about it before on the channel where, let's see if you can notice, he talks about things in certain ways and in certain timbres and in certain methods of his speaking that make things sound either light and fair or dark and brooding. So yeah, I get a little bit nerdy and a little bit like, I don't know, dramatic for a few minutes here, but humor me. And yeah, I say bells a lot. Edgarr Allen Poe, The Bells. Hear the sledges with the bells, silver bells. What a world of merriment their melody foretells. How they tinkle, tinkle, tinkle in the icy air of night. While the stars that oversprinkle all the heavens seem to twinkle with a crystalline delight. Keeping time, time, time in a sort of runic rhyme to the tin-tin tabulation that so musically wells. From the bells, 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 bells. Bells, bells, bells. From the jingling and the tinkling of the bells. Hear the mellow wedding bells, golden bells. What a world of happiness their harmony foretells. Through the balmy air of night, how they ring out their delight. From the molten golden notes, and all in tune, what a liquid ditty floats. To the turtle dove that listens while she gloats on the moon. Oh, from out the sounding cells, what a gush of euphony voluminously wells. How it swells, how it dwells. On the future, how it tells of the rapture that impels to the swinging and the ringing of the bells, 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 of the bells, 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 to the rhyming and the chiming of the bells. Hear the loud alarum bells, brazen bells. What a tale of terror now their turbulency tells. In the startled ear of night, how they scream out their affright. too much horrified to speak. They can only shriek, shriek, out of tune, in a clamorous appealing to the mercy of the fire, in a mad expostulation with the deaf and frantic fire, leaping higher, higher, higher with the desperate desire, and a resolute endeavor, now to sit or never, by the side of the pale-faced moon. Oh, the bells, 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 what a tale their terror tells of despair! How they clang and clash and roar, what a horror they outpour on the bosom of the palpitating air. Yet the ear it fully knows, by the twanging and the clanging, how the danger ebbs and flows. Yet the ear distinctly tells, in the jangling and the wrangling, how the danger sinks and swells, by the sinking or the swelling in the anger of the bells, of the bells, of the bells, 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 in the clamor and the clangor of the bells. Hear the tolling of the bells, iron bells. What a world of solemn thought their monody compels. In the silence of the night, how we shiver with affright at the melancholy menace of their tone. For every sound that floats from the rust within their throats is a groan. And the people, the people, they that dwell up in the steeple all alone, and who, tolling, tolling, tolling in that muffled monotone, feel a glory in so rolling on the human heart a stone. They are neither man nor woman, they are neither brute nor human, they are ghouls. And their king it is who tolls, and he rolls, 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 a pain from the bells, and his merry bosom swells with the pain of the bells, and he dances, and he yells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme to the pain of the bells, keeping time, 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 in a sort of runic rhyme to the throbbing of the bells, 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 to the sobbing of the bells, keeping time, 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 as he knells, 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 in a happy runic rhyme, to the tolling of the bells, 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 to the tolling of the bells, 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 to the moaning and the groaning of the bells. I really must thank you guys for letting me do that, because that's kind of a lot of fun. I don't really get a chance to actually hear myself speak aloud when I read his stuff. And yeah, I got kind of nerdy and dramatic, but it's kind of inspiring. If I could only do with art what he could do with his words, I think that I would actually probably be a horrible, horrible person. Because actually, Poe wasn't really known for being the wholesome type. He kind of frequented places he shouldn't, and kind of used substances he also shouldn't, and therefore, when they found him, he had died. He was penniless, in a gutter in somebody else's clothes. And I think he got paid like $14 for his most famous poem. So yeah, I guess maybe I'm not too jealous of the man, but his skill was pretty incredible. Back to this drawing that I'm kind of working on. Mulan, why is her head shaped like that? That's kind of a design call that I made based on a part of Bram Stoker's Dracula that I read years ago, where the author starts to describe Dracula once he has arrived at the front door. It's really strange, the kind of physical attributes that are ascribed to him. Evidently, his head is large, and he's losing a lot of hair at the sides of his head. It doesn't actually say he's losing it, it just says it's sparse, and it gives his head an overly large appearance, kind of an otherworldly effect. And so I went there with Mulan. I've got her kind of in that pensive, I'm a vampire stance, and she's staring at, her father's sword. And I didn't want it to be too much like the movie. I chose the sword based on it's an old Chinese sword design, so I didn't just make this up, but it kind of sort of looks like what she had in the movie. These little cluster of bats that she's turning into at the bottom, that's a notion that not just the Western people had about vampires, that vampires could turn into creatures of the night, like bats, owls, sometimes frogs, which I think is a little weird and not very menacing, wolves, like you see in Bram Stoker's Dracula. That's a pretty fantastic book if you like really wordy stuff. Most of it is in the kind of style of a diary, if you like reading somebody's diary, except without like, I mean, it can be a little freaky, but it certainly is wordy. Oh my goodness. But yeah, if I was to go after Mulan, considering she had such great military training, or at least didn't die, so therefore must have been decent at it, right? At the making of the war. Considering that, I think I might bring every weapon to bear, like Shan Yu has here, with his big stake cannon and a cross and a little bird. What's the birdo gonna do? Who knows? She's just gonna turn into a bunch of bats and run away. Notice Little Dragon? What's his name from the movie? Can't remember. Doesn't matter. It'll come to me in a second. Little Dragon sitting on her shoulder, kind of played by Eddie Murphy. Like, wow, seriously? What a weird part of the movie, and probably pretty offensive to somebody, but it was kind of sort of funny, and I've reflected him here. He looks a little bit more sinister sitting up there. This kind of cloud, it's kind of a pain to draw a bunch of bats, much less like try not to draw every stinking bat with every eyelash and every vein. I've turned them into kind of their shapes and their silhouettes so that we don't have to try and look at every stinking one, because they're not really the focal point. No. But I do need to figure out how to make them look like they're going to blend into her robe or her dress or whatever this is. And so when I start to fill in all of this design, you'll see that I can just start with one color and blend it in. And oftentimes I start with actual color, but in this case I've chosen to start with just grays, all grays, so that I could get all those tones right before I start colorizing it. That is often one of the places where I fall flat on my face. If I don't pay attention to the tone, that is the grays and the blacks that live under the colors, then it all just looks bad, especially when dealing with red, because I am going to turn her outfit red. It just seemed right. There's something about a vampire and all the blood that makes him want to be either black or red, and they usually have some kind of white feature to them, probably teeth. I remember in Bram Stoker's Dracula, it was one of the things that was constantly narrated about Dracula himself, was the fact that he had white teeth, super red eyes and lips, and yet some people found him super attractive. To me, that sounds creepy. Whatever. A little bit of gold there. Gold is one of the harder things for me to paint. I'm not even sure I was super successful right there, but it is what it is, and it kind of looks like metal that is goldish. I'm going to add some background in. I'm already planning for where Shan Yu is going to be lurking above her back there, and kind of the beauty of digital is I'm able to bring in his file into this one and kind of meld the two together. I wanted them both kind of in the same episode so that we could see kind of how they come together, and I think it's working out pretty well. She's a little bit oblivious, but maybe she isn't. Maybe she's ready at any second to lash out and strike. What should I do next, guys? Should I keep going with the not the vampires, but the zombies, the Disney princesses? I could do someone who's a werewolf, and like, which of the princesses would make a good werewolf, and who would make their werewolf hunter? Keep in mind, I want it to be the good guy who is the monster, and the bad guy who is the antagonist. I am a silver-tongued devil. We are now at the part of the video where I ask you guys to like it. Do not forget to like it. It's very important to my self-esteem, guys. And if you like it and haven't subscribed to the channel, find that button, smash it. And if you've subscribed, find the bell down there and hit the bell. The bell basically means YouTube's going to tell you when I publish a video. And please don't forget to share this, because it's more fun when you share stuff. After you've shared it, don't forget to create. Create something, especially if it's a better day for someone else. And also Kurt Sibylla.